Welcome back, you idiot.
I'm not cutting that. I'm putting that in somewhere.
Not the listener. It's Craig, the recorded device. Come on. We love our listeners.
Welcome back, everyone, to this episode of 2 On, 2 Out. We have returned after our brief one-week intermission for reasons that don't really exist. We just didn't record last week for basically because my phone didn't work. So we're back.
I was sick of you're just sick in general and sick of the Phillies, and you were briefly kidnapped. Which mom rescue.
Yeah, Verizon, I think, held me hostage. They didn't let my phone receive any calls or texts, and I was essentially wiped off the planet for about 24 hours. So that was interesting. But today we're gonna get into to a recap of the Philly season. We're a bit past the 25% mark of the year, and so we've got a relatively good idea of how this team is shaping up. First, we will recap the games that we missed from 2 weeks ago and this most recent week. But to start things off, I have a question for Bob that I think is...
It's me.
Well, yeah, it might be the most important that I ask in this podcast. Bob, if Jazz Chisholm is traded to another team, does he change his hair dye?
I mean, I would. The answer is I hope so.
I would hope so too, and for that reason, I kind of want to see him get traded to like the Athletics or the Rockies to get
Rockies. That's the Rockies.
Yeah, to get some really cool colors going in there. Yeah, I just thought that was something we needed to bring up because he does have really cool hair, and I really wish his really cool hair and pretty good play style were on the Phillies. But that's besides the point, and we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. So. The first series that we left off with was against the Blue Jays in Dunedin in their spring training home. Phillies would win one game out of that 3-game series. The opener of that series saw Harper with a bases clearing double a bit later in the game. That one was a little bit of a crazy one. There was a lot of wind. You know, the weather down there was affecting where the ball went. Velasquez got the start in that one, 5 2/3 innings. Just the one earned run with a Vladimir Guerrero Jr. home run. And there were a couple balls that probably would have gone out, but again, with that wind, saved Vinny a little bit in that one. We move ahead to Saturday's game. Phillies would get shut out 4-0. Once again, Vlad Guerrero Jr. hits a home run. That first inning, not great for. For the Phillies. I think the Blue Jays scored 3 of their 4 runs in that first inning, all coming off of Aaron Nola. Again, another road start where Nola hasn't looked particularly crisp to this point in the season. He did go 6 2/3, 9 hits, 3 earned runs. Bounced back after that first. Had 8 strikeouts. Matt Moore closes it out with an inning and a third scoreless. There were 3 errors in that game. Got Joe Girardi a little fired up after that one. Which leads us into Sunday's game, where the Phillies would fall again 10-8. It was uglier than that box score kind of indicates. The Phillies had the bases loaded in the first, but didn't score. Meanwhile, the Blue Jays scored 2 with their first 2 batters of the game, leadoff home runs by Marcus Semien and Bo Bichette. Chase Anderson would manage 1 1/3 innings pitched in that one, 8 hits, 7 earned runs. A lot of batters got on in the second. David Hale would come in relief. Just an ugly start. But they would rebound, the Phillies, that is. Nick Maton collects his first Major League home run in the 5th. Andrew McCutcheon would hit a home run there as well. Baum would hit a single after Segura tripled. So they score a couple runs there. In the 6th, Nick Maton breaks through again with his second career home run. At that point, I think that put the Phillies up. Phillies were down 8-4. May have been 8-6 at that point, but they battled back. It was interesting to see. You go down early like that. there have been a couple times this season where this team has shown some fight, and we'll get to it in some of these other games where, they're not necessarily out of it when they go down early, which is nice to see. Like I said, though, they do end up losing this one, even though they score, a couple more in the ninth. Final score 10-8. Some of the big things to come out of this series: JT Realmuto did not play at all. He would eventually land on the injured list after kind of Phillies playing games in a sense of, keeping him on the bench but never playing him. I think he missed 6 days before they ended up putting him on the injured list. So they essentially wasted time with him there. Kingery in that series would end up getting. He started a game for Bryce Harper, who was, hurt or banged up a little bit with his shoulder, and then Kingery gets a concussion in the middle of the sixth inning in that Sunday game. So then Harper comes into the game injured, has a couple of bats that were pretty ugly, and it was a little worrisome to see him up there with a hurt shoulder like that. We'll get more into the injured list as we go on, but Kingery would go on the list after this game. Didi, I think at that point, had already been on the list, so injury is already playing a factor with the Phils this season. Bob, was there anything in that Blue Jays series that kind of stood out to you?
Yeah, Bo Bichette's hair. Just a glorious head of hair on that man.
Yeah.
No, it's that series was felt hopeful in game one. Although, like you said, I think the wind was mostly on the Phillies side that first game, and then after that, the Blue Jays do what the Blue Jays have been doing, which is score a lot of runs and a lot of home runs.
Yep.
We said this, last time we were on, that we were running into a bit of a tough stretch, and you saw it there. Just you come out with a win in the opening game, but unable to get a series win, and unable to get a series win in the next two series.
Yeah, well, and the next series against the Marlins played out the same way. Phillies were able to win the opening game, but can't get the series win as they would drop the next two. That first game saw both starting pitchers look really, really good, and I mean the pitching staff as a whole for the Marlins was looking good up until the eighth. Zagar Wheeler would go 7 innings, 5 hits, just the 1 run. Cody Petit for the Marlins would get the call up and start the game. And then some of the bullpen guys, Bender, Blyer, Bass, would all come into the game. Combined 7 innings pitched, just the 1 earned run on an Andrew McCutchen sacrifice fly. Then we get to the 8th inning. Jose Alvarado comes in for the Phillies, gets a strikeout, but then he would allow a 2-run home run to Jazz Chisholm, who we mentioned earlier, and that put the Marlins up 3-1. It wasn't a bad pitch either. It was 100 miles an hour up and in on the hands, and Chisholm was just able to make a beautiful swing on and put it in the seats in right field. And at that point you're thinking, oh boy, this is you're down 2 now with just 2 innings left, and again, we mentioned this team has shown fight, but you still get a little worried with just 2 innings to rebound. However, the Phillies in the 8th inning, we'd see an RBI double from Alec Baum. We'd see an RBI single from Nick Maton, pinch hit RBI double from Ronald Suarez. Later on, Gene Segura hits an RBI single. Bryce as well with an RBI single. So the Phillies score 7 runs in that 8th inning to put themselves 8-3. That would be the final score. Neris comes in and shuts things down in the 9th. So a really great opener to the series. Again, some fight back from the team, some great pitching to kick things off, and it looked like they could take 2 out of 3 from a team who has been a thorn in their sides for what feels like forever. However, the next 2 games, Wednesday's game on the 19th, the Phillies lose 3-1. Trevor Rogers, the pitcher for the Marlins, he was just unhittable, 7 2/3 of an inning pitched. Just the 1 earned run, which was an Andrew McCutchen home run, which, by the way, was his 6th in the month of May. So in that game, McCutchen continued to produce in that leadoff spot. For the Phillies, Zach Eflin does go 6 innings, just the 2 earned runs allowed. Brian Anderson hits a solo home run early on. So we head to the seventh inning, where Brandon Kinsler comes into the game. This is a name you're going to hear come up a couple times this episode. He let 3 straight batters reach base, and then a couple more hits would allow the Marlins to break ahead there. Or actually, they already were ahead, so they extended their lead there. Kumrod came in and kind of shut things down a little bit, but Phillies weren't able to muster up anything else from there. Andrew Knapp almost hit a walk-off home run in the bottom of the ninth, but it fell about 2 feet short of the right field wall. So the Phillies lose that second game. And then in the third game, a bit of an ominous start. Vince Velasquez scheduled to start. However, he gets scratched with a numb right index finger. So David Hale, everyone's favorite member of the Phillies roster, gets the late start. He found out, I think it was about a half hour before the game was starting. It also led to us getting to see Hale's start allowed us to see Zagar Wheeler come in with a pinch hit appearance early in the game. I think it was the third or fourth inning because Girardi didn't want to burn a pinch hitter, and Phillies needed some offense. And Wheeler didn't produce there, but it was kind of interesting to see him show up in that role. In this game, we'd see Archie Bradley return from the injured list. He'd allow a double and a triple, as well as a ground out. 2 runs scored off of Bradley. There was an error from Alec Baum in that inning. Again, something that is going to come up later as we discuss this season. As a whole, the team managed 3 hits, 4 walks, and they struck out 15 times. They would fall 6-0 in that series. Once again, Bob, the Marlins just have the Phillies number. Even when the Phillies are at home in Citizens Bank Park, the Marlins just they just don't stop.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. It's just mind-boggling. It's like some kind of brain freeze happens for them when they play the Marlins. It's just utterly baffling.
Yeah, I do think we have to acknowledge the Marlins are improving. This is not the Marlins of a couple years ago that were the bottom feeders and they were kind of a laughingstock. They do have talent on that team, especially on the pitching staff. They are not. They have improved. They have done well with their quote unquote rebuild. And that team is shaping up to be pretty interesting. We've seen the Marlins in the past get players like this of this caliber, and then suddenly they flip them and trade them all away. So we'll see if that keeps up, depending on how this season goes for them. So the next series for the Phillies saw them welcome the Boston Red Sox into Philadelphia, and the streak ends here as far as winning the opening game of the series. They would drop the Friday game 11-3. Just not much of a positive to take out of this one. Aaron Nola gets the start. He allows 3 hits in the first inning. 2 runs would score. He looked okay. He bounced back until the 5th inning when he would allow a home run, a single, a triple, and another single, and they eventually pulled him from that game. Gene Segura would hit a 2-run home run in the third. But in the end, it just was not enough. Nola ends the day allowing 5 runs, 4 earned runs total. Connor Brogdon would come in. He'd allow a double, a single, and then a ball hit out to Andrew McCutchen that McCutchen kind of kicks away from him, so another run scores there. 7th inning, Devers for the Red Sox, a 2-run home run. Vince Velasquez would come in and pitch an inning and a third of scoreless relief. He had 3 strikeouts in that appearance. And Chase Anderson, who lost his starting role, he was scheduled to start the next game, but the Phillies decided to bring up Spencer Howard. So Anderson is relegated to the bullpen. He allowed a bases-loaded double to Christian Vasquez, and so the year that Anderson was having as a starter seems to carry it over into the bullpen. It remains to be seen what the rest of his tenure here in Philly looks like. As for the Phillies, they'd go on to lose the next game of that series a little bit closer, 4-3 in a Saturday night game. Spencer Howard, as I mentioned, got the start. He looked strong in his first 2 innings, and then in the third, his velocity dropped 3 to 4 miles an hour. He was all over the place. He had been striking out guys left and right, and then just couldn't do it anymore. After the game, he would say that running to first base on a ground ball, it tired him out, and he was no longer able to.
Not a great look.
Yeah, that's very concerning, especially especially because last year he had the same issue. Am I right? He had a similar So I don't know. I don't know what that means for Howard's career. That he just has a history of high velocity, high intensity very early on, and then just can't keep it up. Does that mean a move to the bullpen? Can he become?
I think so. I think it's. I think he will eventually become a bullpen piece, which is okay. I mean, you can never have too many bullpen pieces, but for a guy who many hoped, including the Phillies hoped, would be not a savior of the rotation, but definitely another very good piece to add to the rotation. A guy with some velocity to add to the rotation. It's not a good look as of right now. It appears that he long term may be headed to more of a bullpen role when they really could use help in the rotation.
Yeah, and like you said, it's not a terrible thing to have a guy that could be good out of the bullpen, or even if it's a late inning appearance that can shut things down. It's great to have, but yes, the idea was for him to be a reliable starter, and as of right now, he hasn't been that. We'll see how the rest of the season plays out. Phillies nearly came back in that Saturday game. They had a chance to score late in the ninth inning, but they couldn't pull it off, so they dropped the first 2 games of that series. They would win the final game 6-2 on that Sunday afternoon. Brad Miller hits a 3-run home run in the first inning, put the Phillies up early, and they would not look back. Final score 6-2. So once again, winning just 1 out of a 3-game series against the Red Sox. And that would lead us into the most recent series where the Phillies traveled down to Miami to once again play the Marlins. Mm-hmm. The opening game of that series, Zach Eflin goes 6, allows 4 runs. Brad Miller would hit his 100th home run of his career. Oh, which reminds me, earlier in that Red Sox series, Rhys Hoskins did hit home run number 100 after sitting on 99 for nearly a month. So it was nice to see him break that out, relatively early in his career to get to 100 after that, when he first came up back in 2017 and hit all those home runs in just a couple of months. So, nice to see him. He's on a hot streak during these games, and his career as a whole has been pretty solid. So, nice to see that out of the Phillies first baseman, and from Brad Miller as the journeyman on the team. Phillies would drop this 9-6. Once again, Brandon Kinsler comes in. After Eflin allowed 4 runs in 6 innings, Kinsler allows 4 runs in just 1/3 of an inning pitched. Chase Anderson would appear in this game as well, giving up an earned run in 1 2/3 of an inning. So we move ahead to the Tuesday game, second game of that series. Phillies win that one 2-0. Not a ton to report from this one. Vince Velasquez and Sandy Alcantara really went head to head, and both performed pretty well for each of their teams. The only runs scored in this game was a Rhys Hoskins 2-run home run off of Alcantara. It was a pretty solid shot out to left field, and he was amped up when he hit that one. The cameras and microphones caught him using some explicit language, but like we said, Alcantara has had their number, and it was a nice breakthrough little hit there for Rhys. We jump ahead to the Wednesday game, where the Phillies had a chance to win this one, but they would drop it 4-2 to the Marlins. Nola goes 6 1/3 innings pitched, just the 1 earned run. Looked like the Phillies had a chance to win this one. They were up late. However, Sam Coonrod comes in. He's been solid this year, but he ends up blowing the lead in the 8th inning for the Phils. And it's not without some help from the field. Brad Miller over at third base. First there was a potential double play ball to end the inning, and he kind of throws it in the dirt to second base. Segura makes a nice play to keep it, to make the catch off the bounce and get the out at second. But because of the extended time, they weren't able to pull off the double play at first. Then eventually a couple runs score, and it would be the ultimate undoing. Phillies again dropped that one 4-2. And then today's game, little afternoon game on YouTube. The Phillies do take this one 3-2. Spencer Howard gets the start again. He goes 4 innings. He pitched into the 5th, but he allowed all 3 base runners he faced in that inning to get on base. So then Ranger Suarez comes in and shuts things down as he has been doing all season. Only 1 of those base runners end up scoring. Jose Alvarado comes in the 8th inning. He does end up allowing an earned run, which ties the game at 2. Hoskins with another home run in this game earlier on. He's, again, been on a pretty hot streak, as he's known to be. Once he starts hitting home runs, he kind of strings them together. So that was his 3rd home run in the last 5 games. So, he's heating up. The Phillies would end up winning it with Odubel Herrera hitting a leadoff triple in the 9th. They would get another base runner after that, and Ronald Suarez would come up. He bounces the ball back to the pitcher and is able to leg out and beat the double play by about, less than half a step. It was very close, but he beats the third of first. Odubel Herrera scores. The Phillies managed to split the game in this. Split the series in Miami, which to me feels like a win. If you can split on the road like that, especially against a team that you don't typically play well against, to split a 4-game series like that is pretty successful. So in these past 2 weeks, the Phillies have gone 5-8, and it doesn't sound terrific. However, they still sit in second place in the division, 2.5 games behind the Mets, who won both of their games today in a doubleheader. This division, as poorly or as well as some teams may play, this division is going to be tight all year long. And, like I said, they sit virtually tied with the Braves for second place, although they have the advantage because they have an additional win over the Braves. So yeah, Bob, anything from those sets of games that stands out to you before we start to go into our quarter season review here?
Yeah, Andrew. So, I know we were trying to get through the last 2 weeks of games since we missed last week, but I do want to take time to point out a guy that I'm going to talk about later on in the show, who was great the past 2 weeks and has been great all year. It is Zagar Wheeler. Over his last 2 starts, 14 1/3 innings, combined 8 hits allowed, only 1 earned run, only 1 walk, and 22 strikeouts. Just absolute ace for us, and really one of the few bright spots for this team and for the last for the team for the season and for the last 2 weeks in particular.
Yeah, I will agree with you. I did a little bit of a disservice there to Wheeler. He has been absolutely fantastic, without a doubt, the ace of this team in that period. And yeah, he deserves recognition because
even though he is when he's helping your argument for no DH as well.
yeah, he can put the bat on the ball as well. I think that's why you saw him pinch hit there for David Hale at that bullpen game. Because Wheeler, not only because they're trying to save some of the bench players, but Wheeler can put the bat on the ball when he's over the plate. So yes, let's let's jump into our quarter season. It's like 31% of the season review. We'll break down each facet of the team. So when we look at the Phillies offense, currently batting .234 in the season, which sounds pretty low. But when you look at the overall rankings, that puts them 16th in baseball and 8th in the National League. Kind of similar for their on base percentage at .309. It's 17th in baseball and 8th in the National League. So it kind of feels like they're not hitting and not getting on base and underperforming, but it's just a baseball thing. We've talked about it before. Baseball in general this year is just down offensively, and we're seeing the effects of that on the Phillies. Slugging .376, that's down a little bit. They're 23rd in all of baseball, 11th in the National League. Their 50 home runs is 20th in baseball and 9th in the National League. So nothing too flashy in those numbers, nothing too dismal in those numbers. They're just very very average to slightly
Mhm.
below average as far as as far as baseball standards right now.
Yeah, I mean it's not the numbers that we were hoping to see. On our first show, we mentioned how we thought this team had tremendous potential offensively with this lineup. Obviously, that had not come to fruition. But it is on par with what we've been saying the last few weeks. Is that this is an average team? They are just below 500 record wise. They're 2 games behind the Mets. They're playing average baseball. They're in the middle of the pack in a lot of ways, but this is who they are right now. But you're forgetting a great stat offensively for the Phils, Andrew. They're third in striking out in majors. Yay!
Yeah,
513 strikeouts.
that-
They now have 51 home runs because of Rhys's home run today, which is just for context here. So they're at 51 home runs as of today, with Rhys hitting his 11th home run today. Before the Blue Jays series, the Blue Jays had 51 home runs, which was at the time second best in baseball. They currently have 71, and the Braves, who are first in baseball in home runs, have 80. So just put in a context of where the Phils are in relation to the best home run hitting teams in the majors.
Yeah, the pop just isn't here in Philly. I mean, we have a couple of guys. Rhys, like we said, at one point was tied for the major league lead in home runs, but then didn't hit one for almost a month. You've got guys like Harper and Realmuto on the injured list. So not a ton of pop coming from the Phillies. You might see more as guys come off the injured list, but yeah, I mean, it is a baseball thing, but there is a little more to the Phillies. Lack of production as well. They don't have the pop, which tells me they're managing to score in other ways, which is nice. But you would home runs are always exciting, and I think you would like to see a little more of that. Staying on the the offensive side here, we talked at length multiple times about the lack of production coming from center field. So I think it's worth mentioning, since Odubel Herrera has come up, the batting average for Philly center field position is now up to 204. That was hovering around 100 at one point. That puts them still 27th in baseball and 14th in the National League. But considering they were at the very bottom just a few weeks ago, it is a vast improvement. On base percentage up to 294. That's good for 23rd in baseball, 12th in the National League. 317 slugging, 25th in baseball, 13th in the National League. So those offensive numbers from center field are coming up. I think we're both in agreement that set aside the the personal side of the player, strictly baseball speaking, he is producing and it's improving numbers out there, and certainly he has contributed to a couple of wins for the team. Also producing and contributing to the team, I want to throw some of these stats out at you and see how you feel. So right now, overall pitchers in the National League are combining for a .096 batting average, just under 100. Yeah, not too bad.
Andrew, what are you doing to me?
Actually, let me specify that .096 is the Phillies pitchers batting average.
Okay.
Good for 9th in the National League, a 128 on base percentage, which is 9th in the National League, and a 120 slugging, which is good for 8th in the National League. Now, let's take a listen to the Kansas City Royals DH overall numbers. Hitting just 175, just a 175 average for them.
Andrew.
A 254 on base percentage and a 313 slugging percentage. These numbers, Bob, I didn't cherry pick them whatsoever. I'm just presenting them to you as I see them. So Phillies pitchers, not too far off from the Kansas City Royals DH position. I'm just saying.
Oh yeah, you're just saying. That's
I just happen to compare Phillies pitchers to the statistically worst DH position of any American League team. That's all I did, and I just felt it needed to be pointed out.
And this is your way of proving that we shouldn't have the DH.
It's my way of saying there's not that much of a difference between Phillies pitchers and Kansas City Royals designated hitters. That's all I'm saying.
Now, folks, if you think this is a bit, this is an ongoing thing. It has been for years since I've known Andrew. It's also a thing in text. Every time a Philly pitcher makes a hit, I do text him. Still, what a DH. So, no, this is not a bit. This is just us in real life coming to the podcast.
I listen. I know that again. I know my time for enjoying the no DH in the National League is coming to an end, so I need to get in all these statistics while I can. So we talked about the team offensive statistics. I kind of want to look at some of the individual players. Each of us picked out one positive and one not so positive player offensively and pitching wise that we wanted to kind of highlight. So Bob, if you want to mention, let's start with the positive offensive player you decided to highlight here.
It is a guy that we've talked about numerous times. It is Rhys Hoskins, who currently leads the team in home runs and in RBIs. He hit his 11th home run this afternoon and has 31 RBIs. Andrew, the month of May, he is just lighting it up. He has a 310 average, 416 OBP, and his slugging is down compared to last month, but it's still at 476. He only has 3 home runs this month, but his walks are up. He has 13 walks. His RBIs are up. He has 17 RBIs compared to 14 last month. His Ks are down, which is good. Only struck out 21 times compared to 37 times last month. All of this with 13 less plate appearances compared to April. So Rhys Hoskins is my bright spot offensively for the Phillies.
Yeah, and I mentioned a bit earlier talking about how he's on a streak. You say he only had 3 home runs in the month of May. It is worth noting that they've all come within the last week, and knowing who Hoskins is, this will probably continue into June. So, it's nice to see he'll increase his stats a little bit. And also, I'm curious, as you were mentioning all those numbers, a thought came to my head, and I'm curious what you think. Is Hoskins, even when this team is completely healthy, is Hoskins the most important player in the lineup for the team?
Yeah, he is to me. We talked about him a couple of times. I talked about how important him getting on base and walking a lot is a couple of times so far. So I'm really glad to see that his walks are up this month. He is very important to this team. I know he has slid down the lineup, lately, and he's been hitting it better since he's been, down in the lineup. But I do prefer him when he's on to be up near the top, to get on base, to get those hits, and to get those RBI chances.
Yeah, I do think his slide down the lineup has a lot to do with, we've mentioned Harper, Realmuto, and Didi all on the injured list, so I think that plays a role in it. And yeah, when everybody is healthy, when Hoskins can get on base like that, he's a dual threat. He can get on base and he can bring runs in. And then when you've got him batting ahead of Harper and Realmuto in that lineup, he's going to see better pitches to hit. So, I think he is. I think he is the most important player in that lineup to really have things moving smoothly for the team. So my offensive highlight for the team is another guy who also just hit his 100th home run of his career, Brad Miller. Brad Miller, he was here back in 2019. Bamboo Brad, he brought the bamboo in, and Phillies went on a little bit of a winning streak, and kind of caught on as a nickname for him. But after a year spent in St. Louis, he's come back and played extremely well for the Phillies this season. Mostly a fill-in guy. He's gotten more starting time now that we've got a couple injuries on the team. But overall, Brad Miller for the whole season hitting .319 with a .381 base percentage, slugging .527. So his on-base plus slugging is over .900, which for a guy of his size, he does not look like a power hitter. He really doesn't look like somebody who is typically a productive offensive player, but he has played extremely well for the team. He does have 5 home runs this season, as well as 3 stolen bases. He's played games at first base, second base, third base, left and right field. And as a pinch hitter, he's hitting 375. So there's just not much about Miller that has been bad this season. His strikeout rate is up a little bit. I think it's up over 30%. So, you'd like to see that reduced a little bit. But with the numbers he's putting up when he's not striking out, I mean, it's they're too good to ignore. And I think that's why you've seen him in the lineup just about every day since these injuries have started piling up for the Phils. In the field, he doesn't have any official errors. Again, we mentioned in that Miami game, he had that bounce throw to second to Segura, and later there'd be a ball that got past him that probably should have been caught. So while no official errors, he's not the surest of fielders. But again, when you have a guy who is versatile like that and can make the average plays and kind of be a stopgap like that, I think it's something that's worth applauding. And so yeah, he's I think I've had the most fun watching him play this season. I'm really, really happy to see him playing as well as he has. And at this point in the season, nearly 2 months in, it doesn't feel like it's a fluke. Sometimes you guys see bench guys going have a 20 at bat streak where they've got 11 hits or something like that. But he's got over 100 at bats this season, and he's been playing this well. So look for Brad Miller to be a solid player for this team, and somebody who, if this team is going to make any kind of playoff run, Miller is going to be a guy that's going to need to continue to do this, and he's shown no signs of slowing down. Speaking of slowing down, now we get into the less than positive players that we've each decided to highlight. My choice for this section is Alec Baum. Baum came up last season. This star-studded third baseman. We all had our comparisons as far as who we were hoping he would turn out to be. And there's no reason to think that he can't turn things around. But at this point in the season, hitting just 212 with a 249 on base percentage, 318 slugging. He does have 4 home runs, 3 stolen bases as well. His strikeout rate is about 28%. So, he's striking out just about as much as Miller is. I think the biggest difference is in the field. Alec Baum at third base has already made 8 errors this season. His fielding percentage is just .932. And I know fielding stats, especially the advanced stats, are a little bit harder to calculate, and they're perhaps a little bit less reliable. But currently he has a -8 defensive runs saved statistic, which is worst for all third basemen in baseball. So, he's a bit of a liability over there at third base. And I think that's something we heard about as he was coming up, is that he's probably not going to remain a third baseman for his career. He's shaping up to be more of a first baseman. And, with Hoskins already here, we'll see how that plays
or
out.
a DH.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, with the DH more than likely coming to the National League next year, or, whenever the Major League Baseball and the Players Association can come to some sort of agreement, whenever that is, we'll probably see a DH in the National League. But with the offensive numbers he has right now, I mean, can he even be your DH? How concerned are you so far with Baum's numbers?
I am not terribly concerned. I'm concerned, but I'm not terribly concerned considering his age and what we've seen him do, especially last season when he finished second in Rookie of the Year voting. I'm not terribly concerned. I did, in the past week or so, question whether or not, and it's still, we're in a weird spot with this division. We're only 2 games back. It's still a winnable division, but I was considering this with not only him, but with Scott Kingery, of maybe they just need to be in the minors this year. If you are really not going to be a team that's going to compete or going to make a big impact in the postseason. I know I predicted them to make the postseason this season, but maybe it is best long term. And I know Dombrowski's doing a lot of looking into the team in general and the scouting process of the prospects in the system. Maybe it's best for both those guys to maybe spend significant time in the minors. But that is a hard decision to make with a team that is teetering on possibly being able to make the playoffs. Is it worth it? Is it not? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, right now Kingery, yes. Kingery, I agree, needs to be down there and hopefully try to rejuvenate his career. Bohm, I think, has a little more leeway right now for multiple reasons. One, he is your third baseman. I mean, we just got done talking about Miller. And if you really wanted to make him your everyday third baseman, I suppose you could. But who replaces Miller? Who then is your your super utility guy like that? Um, eh, there's something to be said too about if they were to demote Bohm back to AAA, what that does for his psyche as far as he had the opening day third base job and now he's getting sent back down. So there's a lot to balance there, and
Mm-hmm.
right now I think they're going with the approach of letting him ride it out and continue to get playing time and see if he can figure it out up here with the major league club. So,
Yeah, I will say two more things before we move on. One, I absolutely would love not only the DH to be in the NL, we already know that, but I would love for Bohm to potentially be that DH. I think when he is hitting on all cylinders, he is a hitter who can hit to all fields. That's when he is at his best, is when he's not pulling the ball, but he's also slapping it, the other way, getting it through the holes. So I would love to see a guy who's not particularly great defensively just be able to focus on his offensive game as a DH. And on the Brad Miller front, it is very nice to see his numbers. Right now during the season, I do worry about him as a career bench guy. Can he sustain this numbers, or can he at least be, adequately productive enough to help this team for the rest of the season?
Yep. It remains to be seen. I agree with you on all points there. So far, he's looked great, but we still have a decent amount of the season left to go, and it remains to be seen if he can have that play out over an entire season, especially because when these guys come off the injured list, his playing time will likely be reduced. So, Bob, who do you have as your not so positive offensive player of the season so far?
Well, he had one positive moment today where he got his first RBI of the season. That's Matt Joyce. Matt Joyce is batting under 100. He's batting 077, no home runs. His one lonely RBI, which he got off a sac fly, I believe, today.
Yep.
He's made a couple of nice defensive plays when he's filled in for McCutchen and Harper that I can remember the season. Nothing too spectacular, but plays that I'm like, okay, that's not bad for to make that play. But he has been dismal at the plate. The Phillies already have a bench problem. We talked about Wheeler having to pinch it, not only because it was early in the game, but because they were so hamstrung by a depleted bench. You didn't have JT, you didn't have Bryce, who you could argue they should have been put on the ILs sooner than they were. But the bench has been pretty useless for most of the season. Although you have guys we talked about like Brad Miller, who's had a great year. Lately, it's been Torreyes, who's come up and done a great job. Fun fact here, Torreyes has the same amount of RBIs as Francisco Lindor in tie games this season, with 4. So having a guy like Matt Joyce on the bench who is not contributing in any way, especially with injuries that are depleting your starting lineup, it's just not the thing you want to see from a guy who everybody hoped would be a pretty reliable, or hopefully reliable, fourth outfielder.
Yeah. In the spring training, he had some pop. He looked like he was going to really be able to contribute to this team in some way, but apparently just wasn't meant to be. And if he's not able to, I know he's hurt for a little bit, but if he's not able to shape things up, you have to imagine the Phillies are going to go another direction and have somebody to replace his spot on the team.
One last thing on Matt Joyce. You want to guess when his last hit was?
April 14th.
Oh, you are close. April 20th was the last time that he had a hit. So over a month between hits is not a great stat to have in baseball.
No, not at all. It's while we're at the tail end of the offensive side of things for the team, I do have some of the fielding stats overall for them. They currently sit at a .984 fielding percentage, which sometimes watching this team, you feel like they are an awful defensive team, but that puts them at 16th in MLB and 8th in the National League, so they're right about average this season. They have some of these things that stood out to me were from the catching perspective, and it's worth noting that JT has missed a pretty significant amount of time so far. The Phillies have just 4 caught stealings. They've managed to throw out 4 runners on the base paths. That's good for 29th in baseball and 14th in the National League. So they are not throwing out a lot of guys, trying to steal bases. And I kind of thought when I saw that, maybe they're just not attempting it a lot because they know that JT has an arm back there, and they just weren't trying to test it. But they've allowed 21 stolen bases, which is 18th in baseball and 11th in the National League. So
and you saw that with the Blue Jays series, with JT not being 100% and being used primarily as DH. You saw the Blue Jays run on Knapp because they know Knapp is not a great thrower. So teams aren't stupid. They know who's catching. They know who's hurt. So with with your best catcher not at 100%, and with the backup who has not nearly the arm that JT has when healthy, teams are going to run on you.
Yep. Yeah, and it's I think it's contributing to their overall fielding stats as well, because the last one I want to bring up, and again, with the caveat that fielding stats are very hard to produce and sometimes are not reliable. However, as a team, the Phillies currently sit at minus 29 defensive runs saved, which is good for dead last in the National League and dead last in baseball. So, from that perspective, yes, the fielding for the team has been atrocious. To break that down a little bit, 11 of those 29, negative defensive runs scored are coming from the third base position. It mostly is Alec Baum, but we've seen Miller play over there. I think Kingery played over there a little bit. There's a couple guys that have played over there. A .938 fielding percentage for that position, which is towards the bottom of baseball. And then overall in the outfield, and I bring this up to kind of highlight that the dichotomy between outfield and infield fielding. The outfield as a whole for the Phillies have a .993 fielding percentage, which is 7th in baseball and 4th in the National League. So not too bad. Their defensive runs scored is -4 out there. So of the minus 29 overall for the team, just 4 of that comes from the outfield. So 25 of your negative defensive runs scored are coming from the infield. So defensively, particularly with McCutchen, we've seen some outfield mistakes, but it feels and statistically looks like it's mostly coming from the infield positions and highlighted mostly by third base. So that's something that'll need to change as well if this team's going to, win games. That you can't win a game when you're giving up the lead late on routine plays or putting yourself behind early. It's
it's just not going to help you win games. And for anyone out there, follow Bob Wankel, who writes about the Phillies for Crossing Broad. He writes great articles. His latest article is about just that, about the defensive liability that the Phillies have been, not only this year, but dating back to last year. It's a good article. I encourage everybody to go read it. He's a good follow on Twitter for When you can't watch the game, he tweets really good stats.
He's got it.
But Andrew, let's continue with our negative. But Andrew, let's continue with being negative. And why don't you give us who has been your worst pitcher for the Phillies this year?
Yeah, and I don't know if I consider him the worst, but I consider him the most disappointing or most maybe even detrimental to
the most not good.
Yeah, to what's going on with this team. Brandon Kinsler. Kinsler is known for having a very solid relieving career. He's played with multiple teams and has played pretty well for all of them. And when they signed him, they brought him in on a minor league contract. Thinking if he's going to play well enough in spring training and earn his spot on the roster, then he's going to have hopefully have a pretty decent season. But right now, he sits at 17 games in which he's appeared, 15 and a third inning pitched. His ERA is 8.22. He's allowing a batting average against of 3.71.
Andrew, is that good? 8.22?
8.22 is not going to win you very many games, especially when you're letting batters hit 3.71 against you and reach base in over 40% of the time. And he's allowed 5 home runs in that time as well. So it
Man, with numbers like that, I'm afraid to know what David Hale's numbers are.
Yeah, well, and that's why I say, because there are guys, you're going to bring up a person soon, and there are other guys who I would say are having worse seasons, despite how bad those numbers are. But just because of the expectations for Kinsler and what he could have been to that bullpen, it's just it's worth highlighting and worth talking about that. Maybe the signing doesn't particularly work out for a team. And I don't blame Dave Dombrowski at all for this. I mean, Kinsler has had a solid career, like I said, and his last few seasons have looked great. And so it looked like a nice veteran addition to this bullpen after a dismal season last year. So he is just not performing the way he should. And before we move on to your pick for LVP so far, I do want to run down some of the team stats as far as pitching this season for the Phillies. Since we talked about Kinsler, let's start with the bullpen. The bullpen currently sits at a 4.71 ERA. And considering that ERA, I believe, was over 8 last season, it is an improvement. It currently sits 24th in all of baseball and 12th in the National League. They have thrown 160.2 innings to this point. The reason I bring that up is because the number of innings that these starters have thrown, which I'll mention in a minute, that is so that 160.2 innings is 25th in baseball and 11th in the National League. So, and that's ranked in descending order. So they're pretty low down as far as number of appearances. And one stat that I saw that stood out to me was they have an 18.4% home run per fly ball percentage, which is the number of fly balls off the bat of the opposing team that end up being home runs. They're allowing 18% of those fly balls to be home runs, which is dead last in the National League and all of Major League Baseball. So if you're looking for something to be, the reason or part of the problem with the bullpen, it may be the number of home runs they're giving up, especially on fly balls like that. Dead last in baseball, and if you're letting the ball fly out of park, you're not really keeping the score down. You're allowing the other team to get back in it, and and either pad their lead or take the lead, and it's not great. On the starting pitching side, however, the numbers look a lot nicer. A 3.89 ERA for the starters. That is good for 13th in all of baseball and 8th in the National League. They have a fielder independent pitching of 3.73, which is a little bit better than their ERA. Puts them 12th in baseball and 7th in the National League. So here's the stat I was just referencing a little bit ago, talking about the number of innings pitched for the bullpen. The starters have gone 277 and a third innings, which is third in all of baseball and second in the National League. So the Philly starters are eating up a lot of innings and doing it pretty well. It's their numbers aren't flashy, but they are just above average. And that's definitely been a positive, and it's definitely spearheaded by Nola, Wheeler, and Eflin at the top of the rotation, but also Vince Velasquez. We have to mention how well he's doing, and
just like we all thought it would.
Yeah, exactly. Another positive, they are striking out roughly 9.64 batters per 9 innings, which is good for ninth in baseball and fifth in the National League. So the starters are getting their strikeouts. So with all of that said, Bob, who is your choice for the least valuable pitcher on the Phillies?
Well, Andrew, do you blame Dombrowski on this signing? Matt Moore, who was signed to a 1-year, $3 million contract in the offseason. He is 0-1 with a 7.36 ERA in only 18 and a third innings. He was kicked out of the rotation after just 3 starts. He's been on the 10-day IL twice in 2 months. Has only made 6 bullpen appearances, and the opponents are batting .320 off him this year.
It's Do I blame Dombrowski for this one? Maybe not. I mean, he has a history in the MLB. His first couple seasons he was fantastic. He looked like somebody who was going to have a solid career, but fell off. He went to Japan to try to rebound a little bit, and looked pretty decent from there and looked pretty good in spring training. So I can't totally blame Dombrowski for giving it a shot. And kudos to the Phillies. They didn't really hesitate to take him. Well, he did end up on the injured list, and that's probably why he lost his rotation spot. But he also didn't stay in there for much longer than he should have. So, but yes, very disappointing. You thought maybe you could get something. Have a career resurrected here, and to this point, it doesn't look like it's going that way.
Absolutely not. And he had that appearance with David Hale last week when they had to scratch Vince Velasquez, which I just thought the Marlins were just kind of have BP all day. That's how I felt.
Yeah, it could have gone worse. It looked like it was. When you hear bullpen game, it's usually not a good thing, and they didn't win, but it was not as bad as it could have been. Let's just put it that way. So let's hop off the negativity train and let's hear your MVP for the pitching staff so far this season.
It's not Ace Noah. It is the true ace for the Phillies, Zagar Wheeler, who currently leads the team in ERA, strikeouts, WHIP, batting average against, innings pitched. He has just been tremendous for the Phils. I talked about Bob Winkle a couple minutes ago. He tweeted out a couple days ago that just this season alone, he's had 3 double-digit strikeout games in his previous 137 starts, which is basically in his previous career. He's had only 8 double-digit strikeout games. And then Corey Simon also pointed out that in his last 4 starts, Wheeler has had 29 innings pitch. He's given up 18 hits, only 2 runs, 2 walks, 36 strikeouts, and he has thrown 401 pitches. Over 70% of those pitches have been strikes.
Wow.
So he is just on fire. And everyone thought, or everyone, I don't know if everyone thought, but everyone would hope Noah would be the ace of the staff. He finished, was it 3rd in Cy Young voting a couple years ago. But it's really been Wheeler, who's just been, honestly, one of the reasons that the Phillies are where they are and still fighting for a spot in this division. Yep,
completely agreed. And I'm glad he's doing it here because had he stayed with the Mets, that rotation would be flat out disgusting.
Yes.
Just unbelievable.
Unhittable.
Yeah, so it's nice that he's doing it here. So on to my pick for the positive pitching player for this season. I can't believe I'm saying it, but Vince Velasquez, he has been, as a starter, fantastic. Whatever he is, the fourth or fifth starter. I guess now he's fourth, just with the way the rotation has shaken out. But to get into his stats a little bit, as a starter, this is removing his bullpen appearances. He has 6 games started, 31 in the third innings pitched, an ERA of 2.30. Batters are hitting 195 against him. They're getting on base at a 238 clip. He has allowed 14 walks to 33 strikeouts. You'd like to see that ratio go down just a bit. And you'd also like to see him, last a little bit longer into games. He's averaging just over 5 innings per start, which is not ideal. You probably like to see him lean closer to 6. And he can do it. He's shown that he can do it. He just needs to get that pitch count down. And I also feel like part of it is how slowly he seems to pitch. He very often takes a lot of time in between pitches and slows the game down a bit. And that can be advantageous, but to me that it feels like it's
it feels deliberate to me when I watch it. It feels like he is deliberately trying to not be Vinny Velo and just throw balls by guys. It just feels like he's trying to collect himself. At least that's what I feel when I watch him now.
Yeah, and maybe it's why he's playing so much better, and he needs to do this to make himself a reliable starter in this rotation. But hopefully they can work on something to get his pitch count down, get his walks down, and get him to last into the 7th inning. Because if he can do that and continue these numbers, man,
it'd be great.
Yeah, he could finally be breaking out into the pitcher we all years ago and several times thought was breaking out. It'd be nice to see. I do want to mention one more guy that I think is deserving of a shout out, especially after his performance today. Ranger Suarez has been quietly fantastic for the bullpen thus far. Including today's game, he has appeared in 7 games for the Phillies. Total of 12 innings pitched. A 0.00 ERA, no earned runs allowed. He does have 1 unearned run to his name. Given up just 5 hits, 3 walks, and 11 strikeouts. Pretty darn close to reliable, he is as reliable as you could ask for a guy to be. Usually when he comes in, it's multiple innings, and he can. He obviously has been shutting down the other team when he comes in. So. Just thought it was worth bringing him up here.
No, I agree. It's so far so good. A couple of podcasts ago, we mentioned, or I think I forget who asked the question of who, but we talked about if we would like a combo of Vince and Chase Anderson to be the 5th starter. I saw it today, and I forget who said it, but I believe it was one of the beat writers for the Phils. Said they wouldn't mind seeing a combination of Spencer and Ranger be your 5th starter, especially with Spencer's velocity issue when he gets deeper into games. I think that would be fine, as a 5th option.
I think my only hang up with that is I would like, because Suarez has been pitching so well, I'd like him to be available for more than just 1 game out of 5. I'd like to see him be able to come into 2 out of every 5 games or whatever. So
yeah, that's true. Especially since he is a lefty.
Yeah,
I think that would be better served. Although with the 3 batter rule, the lefty righty matchup thing is
it's not as
put on hold, which is we talked about it before. It's just a rule that just needs to go.
Yeah. Well, we could spend an entire another podcast talking about that, but we are running short on time here. In fact, we're running over. So to wrap things up, Bob, why don't you give us your down on the farm report on the Phillies so far this season?
Yeah, just briefly, we have I just picked 3 guys to talk about here. I picked the top 2 in the farm system. So we'll start with Mick Abel, who's the Phillies' top prospects. 19 years old, pitching down in Clearwater. Only 4 starts and 10 in the 3rd innings pitched so far. His ERA is high. It's at 5.23 right now, but that's mainly because his first start. I think his second start wasn't great, but his first start really wasn't that awesome. And his innings are low just because they're keeping him right around 2 to 3 innings right now to kind of get that arm worked out. But his last 2 starts, he's pitched 5 in the third, 1 hit, 1 run, 2 walks, 9 strikeouts, and right now the opponents are batting under 200. They're batting 189 against him. So Mick Abel, I know he is. A lot of people are excited about his future, and hopefully in a few years we see him up here with the big club, and maybe he's the future ace of this team. Who knows? Over in Lakewood, which I don't think they call it Lakewood anymore. I think they're the Jersey Shore Blue Calls now.
Yeah.
Is Bryson Stats, Bryce Harper's BFF, the 23-year-old shortstop. So far in 19 games and 62 at bats, he's batting .274 with a .458 OBP. He's slugging .516, 4 homers, 8 RBIs. He's walked 21 times, struck out 19 times. I'd like to see the K's go down a little bit more. And he has 3 stolen bases. And then the third person I picked, just because we talked about the pitching woes of this team. The third person I picked was Damon Jones. He is a 26-year-old lefty. I think currently pitching with Lehigh Valley. He was mainly a starter earlier in his career. Now it seems that he's mainly used as a bullpen. We'll see if they put him back in a rotation up in Lehigh. But so far in 6 appearances out there, 9 in the third innings pitched, 1.93 ERA, 4 hits, 3 walks, 12 Ks. Opponents are batting 129. So I mentioned him because he is 26 years old. He is in AAA, and he's a guy who, if he keeps it up, and someone like a Kinsler or a Hale, more numerous guys that we talked about who struggle in the bullpen, maybe he's a guy we see up with the big club, making his major league debut this season.
Very cool. Always nice to hear some guys down on the farm that are that are playing well and giving you some hope, giving you something to look forward to. Speaking of looking forward, the next 2 series for the Phillies will be against 2 teams we have not seen this season. They get a rare Friday off, and then they head for a 2-game set against the Tampa Bay Rays in Tampa Bay. Looks like Wheeler is going to be starting Saturday's game, and Eflin will start Sunday. So, I mean, realistically, as Tampa Bay is on fire right now. They are playing extremely well. But with those 2 starters, there's at least a decent shot of hopefully splitting that series. You take one of those games. Again, we've talked about being on the road. If you can get 500 winning percentage, that'd be great. And I think if they can go into Tampa and win one out of the 2, I'd be thrilled with that. And then after that, they will head to Cincinnati, where we'll see the rest of the rotation, likely Velasquez, Nola, and then Spencer Howard playing there. And then they'll be off Thursday. So 2 off days coming up for the Phillies in that time. So Bob, just 5 games to look forward to. How do you see things shaking out against Tampa and Cincinnati?
I mean, like I said, it's going to be tough going to Tampa and playing the Rays. But yeah, if you get a split is a win in my book. Just keep sort of the status quo. Jim Salisbury, I don't know if you caught this, I think it was last week, made a NASCAR reference. I know how much you love NASCAR. He said this season is sort of like you're in the race and you're just waiting for somebody in this division to wreck so you can pull ahead. Hopefully the Phillies aren't that team that wrecks. So I just keep status quo. 500 is fine for right now. No one seems to be pulling away right now. Get guys healthy. Get guys back in the lineup. So if we are back here talking about, a sort of a mediocre but stable road trip, and we're still 2-3 games, maybe hopefully better, behind for first place, that would be fine with me.
Well, Bob, you've opened the door, and now I get to make a NASCAR reference of my own. Hopefully, the Phillies play this season, like Chase Elliott last year, who, had an up and down
No idea who
start.
that is.
Exactly. No one will that's listening to this, but I'm going to keep going with it anyway. Hopefully, it's a lot like Chase Elliott last season, where the first half or so was up and down. Some bright spots, some low spots.
Exactly.
And then once it came to playoff time, he turned it on and took home the championship.
He sure did. Yep.
So hopefully,
that dude, he did it.
What was his name?
Chase Utley.
Close enough. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Apologies for the week off, but you know what? Sometimes it's going to happen. Sometimes everybody needs a reset. So we'll be looking to come back next week after this 5-game set in Tampa and Cincinnati, and maybe we'll have a nice little road trip to talk about. So thank you, everyone, and see you next week. Bye.
Go Chase whoever.